I was at this concert the other night, and man, this one song, it just floored me, like
Hmm?
chills, tears, the whole bit.
Wow.
And it got me thinking, what is it about art that has this crazy power over us?
Yeah.
So get ready to dive into neuroaesthetics, because we're going to unpack exactly how our brains respond to art.
It's wild how art can hit us like that, right? I mean, neuroaesthetics, that's the bridge, trying to connect that subjective experience of art with what's actually happening in our brains.
Exactly. Finally peeking behind the curtain of our own minds. So where do we even start?
Well, we got to start with the visual cortex. Think of that as like your brain's art critic, analyzing all those basic elements, the colors, the shapes, the textures.
So the visual cortex is breaking it all down, figuring out how it works.
Yeah, exactly. It's setting the stage for a much deeper experience. But here's where it gets even more interesting. Once that visual information is processed, it goes to other parts of the brain, like the orbitofrontal cortex, the OFC.
Okay.
Now, that little region, that's like your beauty detector.
Huh.
Seriously. Studies show when we look at something beautiful, the OFC lights up like crazy.
Wait, are you saying there's a part of my brain dedicated to just judging beauty? That's nuts.
Pretty amazing, right? And it gets even better.
Okay.
The OFC doesn't work alone. It's always talking to another area, the ventral striatum, part of your brain's reward pathway.
Okay, the reward pathway. Is my brain giving me a pat on the back for looking at a pretty picture?
You got it. That ventral striatum usually deals with pleasure and rewards, but turns out art triggers activity there too. You know that feeling of getting lost in a piece of art, like you lose track of time?
Yeah, totally.
That's your brain's reward system, probably fueled by dopamine, telling you, this is good, keep going.
That makes sense. I mean, there are definitely times when I've gotten sucked into a piece so much, it does feel rewarding, almost addictive. But we've talked about art evoking all sorts of emotions, not just pleasure. Where do those feelings come in?
Right, and that's where the insula comes in. That's a region tied to our emotional responses. It helps us process this whole spectrum of feelings, both the good and the bad.
So if a song gives me chills or a movie makes me cry, that's my insula doing its thing.
Exactly. Think about a song that brings back a specific memory, that powerful connection. The insula is probably playing a key role in making that link.
So we've got this brain crew working together, the visual cortex, OFC, ventral striatum, and the insula. It's like a party every time we experience art.
It's a pretty happening party.
Yeah.
And you know those feel-good chemicals we talked about? It's not just dopamine showing up.
Mhm.
When we really connect with art, our brains release a bunch of neurochemicals, serotonin, like even oxytocin, that bonding hormone.
Wait, really? So art's not just a mood booster. It could actually be strengthening my relationships, even if I'm alone. Tell me more.
It's true. Think about how a song can bring back a memory so clearly, or how discussing a movie with a friend can really make you closer. Art can connect us to ourselves and others, even across time.
Totally. I still remember bonding with my best friend over this super weird indie film back in college. We still quote it. But it makes you wonder, how do artists do it? It's like they've cracked the code.
That's a great question, and it's something a neuroscientist named Samir Zeki has really explored. He's like a neuroaesthetics pioneer, and he proposed two laws of how we see art: constancy and abstraction. Really fascinating stuff.
Okay, you've got my attention. Break it down.
The law of constancy suggests that artists, no matter their style, they're trying to get at the essence of what they're showing us, getting rid of the unimportant details, focusing on the fundamentals, the unchanging parts.
So like a sculptor chiseling away at a block of stone until the figure is revealed, instead of worrying about how the light's hitting it right now.
Exactly. And this lines up with how our brains are wired. We're always looking for patterns, the constants, in a world that's always changing.
And that's where abstraction comes in, right?
Yeah.
It's artists taking those core elements and playing with them, kind of messing with how we usually see.
Exactly. Abstraction in art is all about boiling those fundamental elements down, even distorting them, to get a feeling or make us see differently.
It's funny because when I think abstract art, at first it feels kind of chaotic, like Picasso,
Mhm.
But the more you look, those patterns do pop out and your brain starts making connections.
Right. Your brain loves order. It wants to make sense of things, even when they're presented in a weird way. And that struggle, that's part of what makes abstract art so cool. It doesn't just tell you what it means, it lets you discover it.
And that discovery, that's where the real magic happens, right?
Yeah.
Not just for our brains, but for our whole experience of art. But you've also mentioned it's not just about the art itself. Context matters too, doesn't it?
You got it. It's tempting to think our opinion of art is based just on the art itself. But neuroscience shows us it's not that simple. Our brains are always being influenced by our surroundings, what we expect, even what we know about the art already.
Wait, so just knowing a painting's in the Louvre, that could change how I see it?
Sounds crazy, right? But research backs it up. They showed people the same images, some labeled from a museum, some labeled computer generated.
Okay, I'm hooked. What happened? Spill it. Did those museum labels really do anything?
They totally did.
Nah.
The brain areas for pleasure and reward way more active when people thought they were looking at museum pieces,
Yeah.
even though the images were exactly the same.
No way. Our brains are so easily influenced. It's like we're programmed to see beauty in things we think are a big deal.
It's true. And there's this other study that really proves this point. They showed people pairs of paintings, one real, one fake. But the fake was so good even experts couldn't tell the difference.
Seriously. They were that identical.
They were,
With
but
them.
here's the kicker. When they looked at the participants' brains, the orbitofrontal cortex, that reward center we talked about, more active when they looked at the originals.
You're kidding.
Yeah.
So even though they couldn't tell the difference, their brains were still picking up on something about the real deal and finding them more rewarding.
Exactly. It shows that our experience with art isn't just about what we see, it's about the stories we tell ourselves, our beliefs about the art, and the whole context.
This is mind-blowing. It totally changes how I see art. It's not passive. It's like a conversation between my senses, my thoughts, my feelings, even my beliefs, and we're just scratching the surface of neuroaesthetics. What's next for this field?
Oh, the future of neuroaesthetics is wide open. One area with huge potential: art therapy. Using what we know about art's impact on the brain to create better therapies for things like PTSD, depression, even Alzheimer's.
That would be huge.
Yeah.
We've already seen how art can be therapeutic,
Yep.
helping us process emotions, connecting with ourselves and others.
Yeah.
Imagine what we could do if we really understood the science behind it.
Exactly. And it goes beyond just therapy. Neuroaesthetics could completely change education. Imagine classrooms designed to tap into how our brains respond to art, boost creativity, make learning more fun and effective for everyone.
Now that I love knows, some of my best learning experiences involved art. Acting out history in school, even just doodling in my notebook during class.
Those sensory and emotional experiences really stick with us. And as we learn more about the brain on art, we can create even more of those light bulb moments for students of all ages.
This is incredible. I feel like this goes way beyond just art, right?
Absolutely.
Um,
Think about things like design and marketing. Why do you think some products or ads just work? They grab your attention. Neuroaesthetics can help us understand that. By learning how our brains respond to color-shaped composition, we can make designs that are more engaging and persuasive.
It's like figuring out the secret language of visuals.
That's it. And this applies to designing our city's public spaces, even our homes. Using neuroaesthetics, we can create environments that aren't just pretty, but they actually make us feel better, more creative, more connected.
That's powerful.
Yeah.
We have a chance to design a world that's not just functional, but also really beautiful and inspiring. It shows how connected everything is. Art science, our everyday lives.
It really does. And that makes me think of one last question for our listeners. We've seen how our environment and what we believe can change how we see art. So how is our environment, what we expect, even our mood changing how we see things in our everyday lives without us knowing? It's something to think about as you go about your day.
Wow. Now that's a question I'm going to be thinking about. Lots to ponder.
Ah.
That was an amazing journey into the world of neuroaesthetics. We explored those parts of our brains that light up when we see beauty, the power of art to make us feel things, and how even what we believe can change what we see.
It's been great exploring this with you. Neuroaesthetics is bursting with potential, and I can't wait to see what we discover next.
Me too. And to all our listeners, we hope this deep dive made you curious and maybe even inspired you to look at the world a little differently. Thanks for joining us.